All right, hi everybody. Welcome to the CHP podcast. I'm your host Ariana. I'm the director of coaching here at CHP, and I'm here with Matt B. Davis, who is the host of Obstacle Course Racing Media and now Hybrid Fitness Media, which I love that he's created. Matt and I met. Sorry, my dog is very excited. Matt and I met when I did the Spartan Games. Again, RIP. And it was pretty awesome to get to meet Matt and then get involved in the sport kind of so directly. I feel like I got dunked. Um, like just dunked in. But I met so many awesome people, Matt being one of them, and then he and I just kept in touch ever since just because he's involved in literally everything that happens. So, Matt, can you just tell us a little bit more about how you got started in Spartan, but then how that evolved into you basically being the number one source of information for upcoming races, athletes, everything like that. I mean, you're kind of like the hub. How did that? How did you fall into that role?
Well, Ariana, first of all, I want to say that I think one of the reasons we've stayed in touch is that, um, sometimes you find your people. Sometimes people will send you a DM or a comment and you're like, oh, this is my fucking people. So you've got a good sense of humor. You don't take yourself too seriously. You like, you take what you do seriously. You're good at your job, and you guys do a lot over there at CHP. And I've been buddies with Alec for over a decade, so that's
Love
kind of
it.
how I know about you guys. And I love Alec, and I want to get Alec out there more. Like this total sidetrack thing, but if like the amount of information in his posts is like insane, and
Yeah.
I just feel like um we should get him out there more, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So the short version is that um, I did not choose to become the king of all obstacle racing media. It 100% chose me. That's what happens sometimes in life. And I was a regular guy. I always like to say a regular softball playing, flag football playing dad. So that means I wasn't out of shape, but I wasn't really in shape. I wasn't someone that you would call fit. But I could play, I could knock around the yard for a couple hours and play a sport or whatever. Um, and so, like many people in 2012, I did my first Spartan, I did my first Tough Mudder. And again, many people in that age group, I was 40, just hard to believe, 40 when that happened. And it was like, oh, this seems fun. This is like, this is cool. And I like being outside. I like getting muddy and like being like, I haven't done this. I've been, working my boring day job for years. And it was a business that I owned that I hated as much as you hate any day job, like even though it was my business. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a college degree. I've been making up my whole life as I go. And if I don't do this, I don't know what I'm going to do. And for the heck of it, I started this obstacle racing podcast because it just seemed like a fun thing to do. And then very quickly, I realized I was really good at it and that people were listening. And it was like, maybe I should give this a go. And you got to remember, this is 2012. There's no such thing as a content creator. There's bloggers. There weren't really podcasters. There weren't really YouTube people. There were just people that like blogging was kind of the thing that you did if you wanted to like make money. So I just decided to go all in on this thing, and I stuck with it uh, because I just I really like my job. Like there's a lot of highs and lows when you're a business owner, as you know, and I just this is what I do every day is usually talk to someone and write about it and do fun posts or make a video. It's just stuff I really like doing. And in the last 2 years, as we saw the rise of Deka and hybrid, and we saw obstacle racing kind of staying where it's at, I thought this might be a good pivot. I've always thought about growing another branch of the tree, as it were, maybe CrossFit, maybe ultra running, these other things that we all get into. And that's where the hybrid thing came from. So I think that explains it all in a couple minutes or less.
That was perfect. It was perfect. And I feel like um, I'm so glad that you accepted the responsibility or like saw the need and then knew that you were a good fit for it. Because, I mean, even now, the only reason I know what goes on ever is you. Like, that's it. And like you're how I know of people in the industry, or I know who to follow, I know who's up and coming. Um, so I'm just super grateful to you because it's like knowing, at least on our side, I feel like CHP is still very much in the lift heavy, run fast, but not so much particular sports side. Um, and it's just been really cool to immerse myself in the Hyrox Deka, Battle Bunker, like all these new competitions that are coming up, and all of the athletes that are flocking to them from who knows where. Like they're from all over. It's just so cool. So I just want to thank you because I probably wouldn't know what was going on if it wasn't for you.
Well, you're welcome.
So, starting with Spartan and, you know, seeing how Spartan and obstacle course racing has evolved and continues to evolve, for better or for worse, whether it's forward or backward, or sort of staying the same. Um, how do you think that? Do you think that Spartan lended itself to that sort of hybrid style event that we see with Deka and Hyrox, or do you think CrossFit sort of helped more with that, or like because I have a tough time to like obviously Yancey started Deka under the wing of Spartan, but like I kind of have a tough time figuring out like where these guys got their spark of brilliance from. I don't know if you have any insight.
Yeah, so let's just say that there is no Deca without Yancey. He's not just the face of it. He decided the equivalent of just knocking on every door, starting with like his next door neighbor and like, hey guys, here's what this is. Let's get excited about it. And it's really hard to do that. And you've got to be unbelievably committed and you've got to build a lot of trust. And I always say, it's not that I don't love saying this, but Yancey and Deca succeeded uh, in spite of Spartan, not because of it. Like whatever
Mm,
money, like clearly the money to start the ball rolling, but Spartan, the brand, and Joe DeSena, its founder and CEO, have started many, many brands that aren't nearly as successful.
yeah,
And I mean, I think the Spartan Games is actually a great example. Like,
yeah,
did a pretty good job the first year. Second year, tried to do it, I think, a little bit cheaper and with a shittier production, and it wasn't as good. And I think that's
yeah.
kind of a lot of what happens with Spartan. They have a for those that aren't as familiar with the OCR world, it's not unusual for a founder to be extremely excited and to grow a company from 0 to 1 million or 0 to whatever. But then that whole, okay, well, now we need a 10x. Let's bring in somebody that has a fucking clue about business. And
Mhm.
Joe doesn't. Joe thinks he does because he's made money as a stock guy and because Spartan got to where it is because of him and some smart people that built a great product. But then the expansion of that and I could spend a lot of time talking about it, but I won't. But um, if not for Yancey, Spartan would be like probably as successful as Spartan Trail, which is to say, like, who's heard of Spartan Trail? Right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean Yancey was the reason why I was at the games. Yeah, I spoke to Yancey. That's how I met. Like Yancey is my in into Spartan, and he and I still chat. So like he will always respond to DMs. He's always involved. He's always talking to the affiliates because I coached at an affiliate gym for a while. He is the blood and spirit,
Yes.
100%. I think it sucks too because I think for Spartan, I was just talking to Alex about this the other day. Um, Spartan's a good example of a company that rose to power and fame and size when there weren't many other options and there wasn't a lot of competition. So it's almost like they have more of a survivorship bias than them actually being very good at their job. It's like they were just the only option for a while, or like one of two.
Right.
So they did a really, really good job getting to that point. But like you said, sometimes the decisions that they make once they're that big don't.
But right. But it's kind of like we don't know how much better it could be. And
Yeah,
I've just watched how the industry's gone up
yeah,
and down with them and seen the decisions they make. And, Joe like for like the first 10 years, Joe was like falling, leaning on, well, we're a brand new startup and we're a brand new company and yada yada. Like that was his story, and like kind of crying poor because he's cheap and he likes to do everything really cheap. Which, by the way, if you want to grow a successful company, let me do everything as cheap as possible is not a recipe for success. And I think
Yeah,
that
you
gets
gotta
that
reinvest, reinvest, reinvest as much as possible,
right.
especially into your people and your athletes. And yeah,
All those things.
yeah,
Um, and so now it's COVID. Oh, well, we're still
because of
coming back
COVID.
from COVID, and we're still
Meanwhile,
coming up.
Hyrox and Deka are like
Right.
exploding, and they
Yeah,
came to
he'll
the scene during COVID.
right, and he'll use that excuse for however long he uses it. And I swear, I don't want to spend this whole time talking about, because
Yeah,
the other thing I say about Joe is that anybody else would have quit during COVID. Like anybody else would have just let Spartan die.
yeah,
So the fact that it exists at all is because you have a lunatic like Joe that will never quit. So for better or for worse, we're stuck with Joe. But back to the growth of the sport.
yeah,
I'm as interested in talking to you guys as you are in talking to me, because we haven't figured it out yet. Here's what I've kind of figured out so far, why I think hybrid will be so successful is, um it seems to, if you go to a Spartan race, you see some pretty fit people, but a lot of just let's get off the couch people. Let's go with people from the office, right? And that's how you get 7,000 people at an event, 5,000
yeah,
people at an event. It's a
hmm,
lot of people who aren't necessarily fit or in shape,
yeah,
right? Some, right? Some age groupers, some, really yoked guys that have never run before, and their legs are hurting by the end. Those are always my favorite guys to pass when I was a little bit faster. It's like, yeah, fuck the gym guys. I don't feel
yeah,
that way anymore.
yeah.
And so if you go to a Hyrox event, we'll talk about Hyrox and Deka as the two big players. And then I think we
Hmm.
can also talk about some of these random ass events like that rally in the valley I just went to. Super fun, great event. But
I know
the
your experience there, and you tracking is why I'm going. By the way, so
let's go Deka, if you go to a Hyrox event, these are, for the most part, exceptions to every rule, these are people who are in the gym probably several days a week. Maybe it's a CrossFit gym. Maybe it's Orange Theory. Maybe it's the local Y. Maybe it's just a random, right? But they're mostly gym people. Deca is still attracting a lot of, I think, the Spartan audience, because you see some not so fit people in the start line, and we're
yeah,
glad they're out. We're not knocking them, but I'm just saying there's some fit people and some like couch to 5K people.
yeah,
So it's interesting long term, because I think I've said since day one, Hyrox is way too fucking hard for a new person, and you can't call your sport the sport for everybody. Get it? Everybody. When you want people to push a fucking 270-pound sled. I'm making up the weight. I don't know what the open weights are, but they're fucking heavy, right?
yeah, and run 8K. I think that's the biggest fear for people is just
But you can,
8K.
but you can slow jog 8K. You'll eventually finish. Do you know how
Yeah.
hard it is to throw 100 wall balls? Do you know how hard it is to do that many burpee broad jumps? Do you know how hard it is
Yes.
to it's really hard.
Yeah.
So that's, and maybe they never want that. Maybe they'll always keep it that way, and we'll kind of
Hmm.
see. But when you talk about, this is what I'm curious to talk to you about, your side of the hybrid athlete, right? The sort of original concept of lift heavy, run fast, right?
Yeah.
And um, Alex is early on that, right? Early on that ahead of most people. And there's definitely a lot of those guys online now, right? Here's an
Hmm.
Instagram video. I deadlifted 500. I ran sub 5, or right,
Yeah.
all those guys. And most of those guys aren't competing. So Ryan
Yeah.
Kent, who's really good at Deca and Hyrox, came on his show the other day, and he goes, "Hey man, you guys aren't athletes. You're just really fit. And if you want to call yourself an athlete, there's a sport for you, and here is it. Right? Here
Yeah.
it is." Right? So I don't know. I don't want you to speak for your man, but speak for maybe your guys' business philosophy, or what you think about that, because
Yeah.
a lot of people just do it for the clicks. Obviously, you guys have real information and a proven track record. But a lot of people are just like, "Hey, this is feeding the gram, right? This is feeding the thing." But do you think people need to compete, or is it just cool to just lift heavy, run fast?
I that's a really good question. And I remember seeing Ryan say that, and I remember talking to Alex about it because he and I talk a lot about when I took over the company, and I say I took over the coaching side, and sort of the outreach side. And a lot of what I did in the beginning was figuring out, you know, Alex is intimidating. He's a big buff guy who's done big scary things, and I think we had this sort of and unfortunately, because of all these online kind of YouTube 500-pound deadlift, 5 minute mile challenges, which honestly are a bit arbitrary. Um, People had this idea that hybrid fitness was intimidating or very difficult or that they weren't fit enough. And Alex has always said, hybrid fitness is just exercise. You do cardio and you lift weights. That's it. Like that's it. It's always been exercise. You've always had track teams on the track in the gym, at varying degrees, but we've always strength and conditioning. They've always gone together. Exercise has always been in some way hybrid. And the more that we learn about the ways that strength and conditioning complement one another, the more that we realize there's this untapped middle zone of fitness that we really haven't dove into because of probably some misconceptions with the interference effect, all that stuff. So it's been really cool to watch the the general population realize that there is space for them here, um, and that it's not so intimidating. So a lot of my work, especially with Alec, actually, has been bringing in coaches, teaching other coaches how to implement hybrid coaching, but for general population, how to apply these principles to general population and get people who could benefit from strength training and cardiovascular training doing it in ways that are fun and engaging and keep them coming back. So that was a huge part of what the research that I did when I came into CHP and kind of just was like, what's going on in this industry? And I found that a lot of people's hesitation to buy our templates, a lot of people's hesitation to use our coaching was fear that they weren't fit enough already. Um, and on top of that, training by yourself in two sports can be very lonely, because you can't hang with the runners, or you could go to the run club, but they don't get why you lift. And you could go to the powerlifting meets and you can hang out with the lifters, but they don't know why the hell you run.
Right.
So it's very difficult to, and this is before, this is maybe 5 years ago, but it was very difficult to find your tribe, find your people, your crazies. Um, and I think, we have our own just very small virtual competition every year. I started it a couple years ago called the Crucible, and I've loved it, if not just to meet people who do this stuff and introduce them to each other via the leaderboard, via posts. Our community has grown exponentially because of it. So, yes, it's a competition, but lots of folks are just using it as a yearly measure of their fitness.
Is it different every year? Or is it the same?
It's the same every year.
Do you want to
So
quickly describe it?
yeah, so we have two divisions, pro and scaled, and it's totally virtual. We give people the whole month of October to complete a super total, which is a powerlifting total, squat, bench, deadlift, plus a clean and jerk and a snatch. And then we give them, for scaled, it's a 2 hour foot race, or for pro, 6 hour foot race. So it's as far as you can get in 2 or 6 hours.
So
Um,
just start the clock and go.
Go. Yep. And then we have a Wingate, sort of. It's basically a wattage test on an air bike for 2 minutes. So max calories in 2 minutes. Um, and then a kettlebell long cycle. The weights are different, scaled and pro or heavier. But basically, it's just a one-armed long cycle clean and jerk for 30 minutes. They call it the marathon of kettlebell land. And then we basically, just like, I think Rally in the Valley did this as well, like your place is your score. So if you come in first, you get 1 point. So whoever has the fewest points wins. Alec won the first year. The second year we had, oh gosh, Sam Spinelli. He won. He's so strong. 600-pound deadlift and a 31-mile run in 6 hours. Just freaks. Nuts.
Dude, so 6 hour run is
Yeah.
long for an ultra runner, like not
Yeah.
just a runner, just like holy moly.
Yeah, it's long. It's sort of when we looked at everything and we looked at the events out
I
there,
mean,
we
I love it.
found
I'm not saying you
yeah,
shouldn't do it. I think it's cool that you're pushing people this hard.
yeah.
How closely do you have to monitor this stuff though? Because people love to cheat on an online thing.
So I asked for video submissions, including loading of the bar. A lot of it I learned from
But what about the
CrossFit.
run? What about the run
The
part though?
GPS.
Okay.
So I review the GPS entries that they send me. They have to be uploaded to Strava, and then I have to be able to see that their stuff lines up. So I personally check everything via
Right.
GPS. Um, we actually haven't had any cheaters. It's been small, but I'm grateful for it. There's been some form stuff, especially with the kettlebell. People who aren't familiar with it, it's easy to cheat. But no, it's been really cool, and I think we've had 100 people every year do it between scaled and pro. So it's just been really cool. Because I think on our side, like you said, the lifting heavy and the running, like for us, we want to test the extremes, like the furthest reaches. But I like to give people a whole month to do it because I don't want anyone getting hurt.
Right.
Um, so that's been really fun for us because I've met personally so many cool people, so many incredible athletes who aren't competing in Hyrox and Deka. Um, and I would love to get them competing in Hyrox and Deka because I'm like, why would you not? But it's interesting. It's like a funny. These guys just love to train. I think they just love to lift heavy and run around outside. But I think for that takes like a level of crazy, and I think for most people, what I see the value of Hyrox and Deka being, especially Deka with Deka Strong, Deka Teams, Deka Mile, is that it reintroduces that sense of community and that sense of kind of like especially with the affiliates, that kind of like ground level community support that made CrossFit so big and made people so interested in their own fitness is like you can get better every time you do it. There's a reason, there's something to train for. You can talk to people about it and people do your sport and they speak your language. I think that's so valuable. Like hybrid sports until then was pretty lonely.
Mm.
Um, and I can understand why some people are just like, I don't want to train by myself and compete in nothing.
Right.
And yeah, like, so at least from my perspective, I think the biggest thing has just been the community outreach portion of it. And I do agree with you. Hyrox is much more intimidating. When I worked at MRock in Oceanside, I don't know if you've ever been there, but
I've heard of it.
yeah, Deca Hyrox affiliate, and getting people to do Deca super easy, super easy. Convincing people to do Hyrox, they were like, I have to do how many burpee broad jumps? I have to do how many wall balls? um, so I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know where. I'm happy it happened. Um, they both bill themselves, like you said, as a fitness test for everyone,
Right.
um, as being super accessible, and I would say so. Um, I wish the Deca box step overs were 20 inches for women, just because I've seen some very short women do the 24-inch box and like almost fall. But
Oh,
beyond that,
see,
I think,
I think for the pros that should be a much harder station. Like I when you watch the pros
they
Saturday in
just
Philly, it's like
spin.
it's just like over, and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
well, can we make this a little bit harder? Like, can we
The
maybe
dead
make
ball over shoulder or wall, I like wish that there was a heavier weight option, which is again, I think kind of the benefit of there being a high rocks is that it is kind of that like tougher
right?
level. Because it Deca, I feel like is so efficiency. Like you have to be good in those stations. Um, but Hyrox, I mean, Alec, when he did Hyrox, the sled stumped him because he weighed 155 pounds, and that's a almost
Right.
it's like a 400-pound sled. So yeah, that sucks.
No, I said I think that's but I think if you've heard me talking recently, I think more players are coming.
Yeah.
So there's this thing in England called Athix, ATHX. I recorded with them. I put up the workouts on the YouTube, but I haven't played
I
with the
saw.
video yet.
Hmm.
And there's this 3KO thing, which it's with Conor McGregor of all people, so it's
Yeah, I
pretty
saw.
random. But
Yeah.
I think that might be a thing. We'll see. They're still figuring it out, but I think it's coming. There are people right now that we don't know yet in you know in meeting rooms figuring out what they want their thing to be. Like, okay, we've got the money, we've got the brand. Let's figure out what our thing is going to be because it does feel like the next thing. And I
Yeah.
think you know when you're the new person everything's intimidating, right? Like if you're like your first time at yoga, your first time at anything, you're like, oh my God, I'm the new person.
Yeah.
They're going to make fun of me. And of course they're not, but it's like this, human thing. So I feel like at least when you're learning Deca or Hyrox, for the most part, it's just, pushing or pulling or jumping or doing this thing. And like the complex lifts part for CrossFit is the part that I think is the reason why Deck and Hyrox can be so big. Because like we're never going to ask you to do that. Like we're not going to ask you to learn how to snatch or even swing a
Yeah.
kettlebell. And like for a guy like me, like the first time you showed me how to swing a kettlebell, I had no idea because I had no fucking flexion in my hips. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, what are
Uh,
you doing? I
the
literally did not know how to.
gymnastics.
Oh,
Yeah.
forget it,
Forget.
right? And that's whatever, right? Like I mean, we've joked about it. Me and Marcus, who does work for HFM. He's like, yeah, what scale was it? Him? That's somebody else. We said like, what scaled for walking on your hands? Nothing, right? But forget
Yeah.
that piece. Just just doing the complex lifts part. So anyhow, I think that's why they have such a high potential ceiling. And again, because you can do anything. You don't have to train on obstacles. You don't have to train and just like go to your local gym, whatever that gym is, and then and even if you don't own those machines, you can train, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a ski erg or whatever else, great, even better.
Yeah. The first time I did a high rocks, I didn't. I'd never touched a skier before.
Me either.
My second time touching a skier was the Spartan Games. So, but it's not that hard. You just grab the handles and you yank, and then as you go on, and if you're interested, you can watch videos on how to be more efficient or breathe. But you can get through without breathing.
Right.
Um, yeah, I definitely think they're a lot more accessible. Um, because again, a lot of the movements are pretty basic, and most people can perform them. And I am encouraged to see a lot of proactive measures on the Deca and Hyrox sides each about giving people scaling options if they can't perform the movement to standard. Like if you've got a person with a knee injury who just can't lunge, like they're not going to win anything, obviously.
Right.
So what's their option? And they do actually provide people with reasonable alternatives for the movements,
Excuse me.
which I think is bless you. Um,
Excuse me.
bless you. It's because I was talking to Lauren and Mark, Lauren Rentala and Mark Howe.
Right.
I love them.
I am also big fans.
They're so sweet. the their view, their sort of inside look at Hyrox and seeing what kinds of people have gone out there and just pushed themselves to complete it, whether it's taken them 3 or 4 hours. Bless you. Um, I kind of love that because I think there's a lot of people out there doing ultras and marathons very similarly, um, where they're just like, I'm just going to finish this damn thing. So
Right.
I love that there's space for that, and I love that there's space for people to challenge themselves that way. Um, I don't. I'm grateful to Yancey, and I'm grateful. I always forget his name, the guy who started Hyrox. Like I'm grateful to them for starting this push because now we're seeing all of these competitions pop up. And granted, I think Spartan Games was probably like the first one that I recall seeing like actually televised or big. But now you've got Go Ruck Games, you've got because that's they co-host that with Savage.
Yeah.
And
It's just one little piece of it though. Savage is like they have an
yeah,
obstacle course on Sunday, but I don't think it's a big. I
this
just
one
think
seemed very Go Ruck.
yeah, it's Go Ruck likes to do things the Go Ruck way and don't seem
Yeah.
necessarily very open to. But I mean, people, people are going, and people I guess watched what they could of it. There's no live feed, there's no video other than people's like Instagram stories.
Yeah.
But that's the way they do it.
It was the Go Ruck community is huge. It's
Yes.
huge.
Right.
Um, there's a lot of people that are super into it. So that was actually cool. We have a couple people at my local gym that run a Go Ruck club. So that's encouraging. I've coached a couple ruckers as well, but
Interestingly, though, there's a lot of Go Ruck people who are not don't care so much about the fitness. They just like hanging out. It's their
yeah,
community. They put on a backpack. They put weight
and
in
hang
it.
out.
They go walk. They have a couple beers, and that's their thing. So
Yeah.
that's never been my thing, but I know people dig it.
Yeah. I think that really, again, circles right back to I think what people are looking for is community. They're looking for their people, they're looking for their group. Um, so I think just circle back to Kent, personally, I don't think that I love the people that are pushing themselves for these 505-minute challenges. I love that. I
Right.
think it's awesome. I think it's an excellent goal. Um, there are a lot of people that do that in training. Um, what I would love to see is someone going, what is the heaviest I can deadlift? And what is the fastest mile I can run, even if the numbers don't match? I wish there was maybe a competition that measured that, which is kind of like why we have the Crucible. But to me, with Hyrox and Deka, it's literally how fast can you accomplish these tasks? It's not like I don't know. It's this very kind of because then you've got the 606, which is like a 600-pound deadlift and a 6-minute mile, which makes sense because when you're heavier, 600 pounds is easier, but 5 minutes is harder.
Right.
But why wouldn't you just try for 5 minutes? Why would you stop at six just because the numbers match? Like that's what always gets me. I'm like, is that competitive or are you just aiming for something kind of arbitrary because it's the easiest and it looks cool on paper? Um, but are you actually pitting yourself against other people in your weight class that are performing the same sport as you? It's very hard because we're not really collecting that data as a whole, but it's interesting. The more people that do these challenges, I think the more the internet is starting to view them as stunts, and I don't
Mm,
think that they're necessarily wrong because you've got a lot of athletes that can do super crazy stuff super consistently. A lot of our military guys, they can't have Instagrams, but they're doing insane stuff,
right.
completely insane. Um, they just don't talk about it. um, so I don't know. I'm so supportive of everyone and whatever they want to pursue for their fitness and whatever target they select. If it means they need to improve, is a good one. Um, but I would love to see a better arena for these athletes to compete in that plays to their strengths better. Because I think, um, at least like I found at the games and a lot of hybrid events that come out now, they're still very heavy on the endurance side.
Right.
Um, very heavy. There's not a lot of the guys creating them, at least until like, I saw Rally at the Valley, they were actually CrossFit sort of things. But I mean, for a while, Hunter and I, our strength numbers were similar. And I'm not saying that to be like a jerk. I'm just saying like the strength world is very different. And I don't see it represented as heavily in Hyrox or Deka or a lot of these hybrid events that are coming out. They're very endurance based. So I would be curious to see if someone can get that formula just right, where they really push people to get as strong as they possibly can while maintaining as fast as they possibly can. Because I feel like a lot of Hyrox and Deca, they don't really reward top end strength. You can be middle and just be fine,
Right.
which is okay, but there's space. There's room for something like,
Right.
I don't know. It'd be cool. I don't know what it would look like though.
Well, I feel like that's maybe the more intimidating part, right? Like people people know they're not the fastest, but they feel like they can get faster because it's like,
Mhm.
well, I should be able to like beat whatever I'm at now, but getting huge is like a whole nother like, oh, that's not me, that's not who I am as a person. I'm not this guy that walks around with what do you call it, with cut off shirts and has these giant muscles, you know.
Yeah. Then you've got this one guy just tagged us. He's like 165 pounds, um, squatted 560, deadlifted near 600, and then ran a sub 40-minute 10K. So, like, you've got these tiny little live people out there. No offense to you, sir, for being saying you were tiny. Um, but you've got these little people out
I'm
there
not
that
tiny.
are.
Who said they were tiny?
um, I think that's interesting too. I would love to see is if you go to a powerlifting meet, a lot of the lightweight classes are the heavy swingers. Like, yeah, the heavyweights are the ones breaking the world records in total, but you've got girls that weigh 130 pounds deadlifting 500 now. So it's like, I don't know. Do you have to be big? Maybe that's something we have to overcome um, in our communicating. Maybe you don't have to be a big dude to be really freaking strong.
Right, but I think that's what I'm saying. That's what people might think. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's not if they think like, okay, I used to run before, even if they don't, they're just like, well, my last 5K I did this time and I can probably beat that if I work on it.
Hmm.
But and I want to be strong. I want to be strong enough to, get by and feel healthy, but I don't want to get as strong as possible because that's other people. That's Arnold. That's, you
It's
know,
not me.
right, exactly.
Yeah. It's intimidating. I think both sides. Um, yeah. I don't know. I think it's just going to be a matter of outreach and sports like very introductory level sports like the Hyrox and the Dekas that bring people into the world and then let them see that there's a lot of space here for them to grow and there's a lot of room for improvement. As I see a lot of people that are very strong that are like, well, I'll never be that fast. I'll never run that. I'll never be able to run. So, like, both sides, people are kind of like boxing themselves in. I've always been a lifter. I'll never be a runner. And I'm
Right.
like, have you tried though?
I
Do
mean,
you
for
want to?
you, um, when people how do people usually find you? By the way, like just friends tell them, like, oh, like this seems like you would like to get coached by these people, or you would like their templates, or
I would say a few years ago it was definitely a lot of referrals. Um, Again, it's not something we can't really post the befores and afters and testimonials of our military guys, but I would say probably close to 40% of our clients are military. Just because of all the work that Alex, Annie, and Alec and Johnny have done, helping prep people for selection. We're kind of known for that in that space,
ah,
which is pretty cool. But it's not, we could just be like, we have this selection rate, like this selection pass rate, but we can't really like talk about the guys because they're super top secret.
right,
So the rest of the people, I would say, find us either through Alex, through his book, Alec, and or um, myself now. But yeah, most of it's just Alex's book and people just finding us through his profile or his educational content or have read the book, and then decide that they've got some wonky goals or something that doesn't make any sense and they're like, well, I don't know who else is going to coach me for it. um,
I feel like selection and something like the death race, right, which
yeah.
are incredibly taxing, but also incredibly arbitrary and come down to mental fortitude. Now,
Yep.
mental is people will tell you that ultras are 99% mental and like
Hmm.
everything is to an extent,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's interesting that you guys have like trained on that or focused on that because you could train someone really well but they don't necessarily get the mental piece right.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it's not, you don't you don't look at if you look at the guys that finish selection, they wouldn't be the guys you would pick out of the like the lineup of these are the fittest guys, but they could survive that, and that's a
Yeah.
whole another set.
It's cool that you say that too, because I feel like Nicodemus, um, he's going to school for sports psychology now, especially with his battles with BPD and everything else. He's been an invaluable resource for us with sort of mental preparedness and different ways of evaluating stress and obstacles that you might come up in training. But I think the cool part is that because of our work in selection and because of our work in military, um, I don't want to say that we had like a head start on all this like mental fortitude, grit kind of stuff, but it's been something that we've incorporated into our programming and our training for our athletes for a long time, especially Alex. But a lot of the stuff that we do and a lot of the coaching choices that we make are more about, especially for athletes that want to be competitive or that want to obtain a difficult goal, it's preparing them for that stress or preparing them for that mental. We'll have athletes do 3-hour runs on a treadmill with the screen covered, no music. Like,
That's great.
and we've been doing that for a while. I think it's actually in our 50K template. So I think it's really cool because now that these conversations are coming up and they're being talked about more, they can benefit more people. But yeah, that's something we've always focused pretty heavily on. Is you could be the fittest person in the room, but if you crumble at the first failure or first sense of failure, you're never going to pass selection. You're never going to make it. Like, um, so it's been cool, and I think uh, to drop Alec again because I love Alec so much. Alec is actually going to be leading the next round of the hybrid master course that Alex wrote, and I would say probably most of the programming portion, while it's very science based, we do go over a lot of science. There's a whole other chapter just based on athlete mindset because it's so important. Because you could have someone who comes from a running background that constantly never lifts heavy enough, but they can do 1,000,000 reps. Or you could have someone from a strength background who is completely incapable of handling the discomfort of running. And like, how do you train these people? How do you get them to the same point if they're starting from two very different sports, or people that have no athletic experience and they don't know what's normal and they don't know how to process discomfort? How do you guide them through that? Um, and I think, Alec has been coaching for so long. He's got some really cool, unique views on preparing people and making them a little bit more resilient. But yeah, we've always sort of focused pretty heavily on the mental side, and then how to train people for stuff and trick them into being prepared using the training that you choose.
How do you trick people?
So, if you've ever had like a mile test on your programming, you know that for some people that's incredible. For most people, that's incredibly anxiety inducing. You build up in your head expectation. You start to get nervous about it. So we may hide it in another run.
Oh, okay.
So we may build a run that's actually a warm up with a mile as fast as possible and a cool down, but we won't call it a mile test.
Right. That's wise. That's good. That's good
And
stuff.
so it's just kind of like little stuff like that, or um, I don't know, even just for athletes that fear lifting, helping them find safe ways to actually find their strength limits in exercise. So instead of making them squat as heavy as possible, getting them on a leg press or a hack squat or something that has safeties, um, and just having them, max out reps. And then being like, okay, what did that feel like versus when you report a 9 out of 10 on your squat? And they'll be like, oh, I think I can squat way more than that, actually. So kind of like figuring out where to push your athlete, I don't want to say lie to them, but sometimes you have to lie to them. Um,
I think that's okay. I think
yeah,
I think yeah, I think it's if you're not doing it to harm them, then
no,
then I'll give you my great coaching analogy that I heard once. Um that because it's really hard, and I'm speaking personally because I'm coming back from this injury, and at the same time trying to lose weight because I had this injury, so I wasn't exercising, and so I was eating like crap, and it was just like getting bad. And so
Yeah, it's
when
just
you,
toilet bowls.
yeah, so when you first start, there, yes, the first few pounds do come off easy, the first 10 or 15 or whatever that is, but progress can be slow. So I'm going to PT and I don't feel like it was what's happening. Like
Hmm.
I can't go out and run 8 miles. And I used to be able to do that on any day of the week, anytime. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I could like bang out whatever. And so wanting to be able to do that, and then I had to ask my PT guy. I was like, "Hey, it's been like 5 weeks and I'm barely running like 2 miles at a time." He's like, "Matt, remember when you couldn't do a hip hinge when you first came? You literally couldn't, like you couldn't activate that fucking muscle."
Yeah.
Because I'd just gotten, you know what I mean?
So
So
tight. Yeah.
I had to be reminded. But the analogy, the story is the guy comes in and he wants to learn piano from the piano master. So the piano master gives him this lesson, and like he practices for like a couple hours and he just takes it away from him and he gives him another one and he's like, "I haven't even learned that one yet." So he's working on the second one and he's getting okay at it. And the teacher rips that away, gives him another one, and he's like, can barely do that. And he rips out, he gives him yet another one that's even harder. And he like is really messed with that. And he's like, "Why do you keep doing this to me? Like I can't." And then he gives him the first one again and he goes, "Okay, now play that one." And he's crushes that first one, right? Just
Hmm.
masters it. So I try to remember that. Like, you got to remember where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That, like, oh, a day ago or a week ago, you couldn't even do X. And so now you're getting there. Because I identify as a runner. I'm someone that could go out at any time and like, if you said let's run a half next weekend, I'd be like, sure, why not? Like, it'll be fun, like whatever. And I can't do that today. I mean, I could, but it would probably mess me up.
Yeah. Please don't.
And I have to be really, really patient with myself.
Yeah.
But I got over this little hump with my weight recently that I'm like, I'm stoked again. And then once you're in that place, it's a lot easier to, like, you're further away from the suck part of
Yeah.
like, this is going to suck if I don't do X, right?
There's a lot of self-imposed pressure too. Like I used to, and like if I don't do this, I suck, or like there's a lot of negative self-talk that we could get pulled into when we see ourselves being a person we don't identify with. We don't see ourselves as that person, but we are that person right now. And it can be it can be incredibly difficult to pull yourself out of that. So I'm really excited for you because
Me
it sounds
too.
like you're in a much better place now. And yeah, definitely don't forget like where you started. And it also helps you never take those things for granted once you get them back.
Right.
Um, yeah, coaching is weird, man. It's a lot of just giving people tools. I always say like you could follow any training program and make progress. You could. You could follow any training program and you could make progress. But the real question is, would you be having fun? Does it work with your lifestyle? Do you have to think too much? Are you putting too much pressure on yourself? It's always that stuff where the coaching really comes into play. Um, I think most training programs can be effective for people if followed. It's the if followed part that really makes a difference. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I'm excited for you. That's sounds like you're already in a better place.
I'm in a much better place than I was even a few weeks ago. It was honestly, showing up to Battle Bunker, and I did not like how my t-shirts fitted, and I have not felt like that in many, like, I've not had a problem keeping weight off, you know what I mean, just because
Hmm.
kind of typical guy, you can eat whatever you want and super fast metabolism.
You're just
And
running. Yeah.
yeah, and running, and you could run it off. And so
Hmm.
I went from eating pretty good most of the time to eating really badly. And
Hmm.
now I eat, you know, really clean, and I I'm going to stay that way for a while. Like, I don't like, it's not about being perfect, but like, I'm not ready to have a cheat meal. I'm not ready to just like scarf some pizza until I, at least if I do have one of those times where I go. But I was like, I've never felt that way. I've never been a person that literally was embarrassed about how I looked. And someone might say, "Wow, you weren't even that big," or whatever. But like, I knew it, and so my wife and I talk about this a lot because she has a great coach that she's had for years. Um, and the scale can go up and down a little bit, but it's about how you feel, and it's about how you feel in your clothes. I feel
Yeah.
great in my clothes right now. And again, I know I have more to lose, but certain t-shirts I was like, you could see my fucking stomach, and I hated it.
Yeah.
I just fucking hated it. So
Hmm.
anyway,
No, I coached nutrition first. That was like my first fitness job. And I worked with so many people that like decided to stop losing weight before they were done because they were like, no, I actually feel fine. Like, I feel really good now. I feel really happy. Like, yeah, I'm not at my goal weight, but I look awesome or I feel really good. And I've seen it happen a lot because it's about how you feel. It's if you could focus on that, I don't know, you develop this much better relationship with your body. But so talking about Battle Bunker, because you've got Hybricon Games coming up in October too, and then Rally in the Valley next year. Those two, I'm curious if Battle Bunker will include any barbells because it seems like they're mostly sandbags and sandballs, kind of like
right,
strongman
right,
military style implements. But Rally in the Valley, they actually had like a DT, like a CrossFit event, right?
right, right. And
Which is
the
cool.
the Saturday event, the surprise event, there were three different uh, running events. There was a 5K cross country. There was a
Hmm.
400-meter up a hill with a ruck and a bag on top, and then the downhill. And then when they got downhill, there was a rower and a med ball. So it was 40 calories and then the most med balls you can throw, and it was like six
Yeah.
minutes or whatever it was. And even that I think is such a good, like, what a great test. It's pretty simple, but
Hmm.
it's testing a lot of stuff. And do you sell out on the rower to have a little bit more time to throw more dead balls, or do you take it a little bit easier? And they just come down from all this running, and I think Matt and his team did such a good job,
Yeah.
um, that obviously it was he did a good job. The volunteers were great, like whatever makes up a great event. But I think the programming was awesome. And it's funny because people, like, even if they weren't runners, they loved day one and they loved day two. They got to paddleboard. Most of them had never done that.
Hmm.
So I, I mean, it's only been a couple of weeks, and he's already like filled it, I think, and they're going to open up more spots.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, the battle bunker, I think I've heard different things. I've heard Hunter wants to make it super random and add some like gladiator type stuff, and
Of course.
I don't know what they're gonna end up doing because it's
Yeah.
Hunter. So I don't know what they're
Yeah.
gonna end up doing. Um, but I think we're gonna see more of those too, right? We're gonna see more of the Hyrox Deka, and we're gonna see more of these, you know, for people who've been going to the gym or go to CrossFit comps, like backyard throwdowns, like that's not new, right?
Hmm.
But they've always been very CrossFit based, and this idea of adding this endurance piece is pretty cool.
I really like it. I'm excited. Like, I really like what they did at Rally in the Valley with the programming a lot. They tested a lot of different stuff. Last year, I was there at, I snuck on Battle Bunker. No, I was there for that, and that was pretty cool. It seems like that it's going to be a 2-day event, much bigger this year, but I'm curious to see what direction Hunter chooses to go with
What did
it
they
and
do?
how they're
So
going to set themselves
I'm trying to
apart.
remember Battle Bunker. So Battle Bunker was a run with a ruck, and then you
Yep.
rode, and then there was like a 400 time.
Yeah, I think it was an 800-meter.
Right. So how did you
Um,
do? How did you do in that one? I don't even remember.
oh no, I didn't compete. I literally just went there and watched.
Oh, you snuck on. Are you
I
guys in
snuck.
San Diego?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I just snuck over. Um, and then that one was interesting. I don't know if they ever revealed their scoring metric for the workouts. And I think that was
No.
everyone's biggest annoyance was that no one knew how things were going to be scored. Um, which I mean, you don't always know. It's up to the creator to decide
Right,
how
but
the
you've got
competition works. But
right, but
um,
you've got to have some transparency though around that stuff, and
right, I
that's
don't I
a
don't
big
know
thing
if they
for me.
ever revealed the scoring, honestly.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that that improves this year. Hang on. Sorry about that.
You good?
I am
You okay?
just needed to take a moment there. Did that come through? I moved away from the microphone so you
No,
wouldn't
you're
hear
good.
it.
You're good. Uh, yeah, I'm curious. I think that's been the biggest issue with people's excitement about Battle Bunker, um, is they don't know what it's going to be, and I think I think the scoring thing made people feel pretty weird last year.
Yeah, I think so too. I hope they figure it out. I really do.
Yeah, yeah, because there's a lot of promise. It could be something super awesome. I really like Austin, so I I hope that they get the scoring.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
do you think that if someone is currently lifting and running, that they should try a Hyrox or a Deka or both?
Like you want to see what your like you want to see where your fitness is, I guess. I
Yeah,
guess it would depend on what your goal is. I mean, I think that Hyrox is a it's just a bigger test, right? It's just the weights are heavier, the running is longer, and I think people say like maybe do a deca first and then see you would like it, but that doesn't really work either. It's 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 kind of like I think if you're newer, you probably shouldn't try it. Like if your fitness is newer in terms of like how much like you just got back in the gym, I don't think you should do a high rocks yet. I think you should do a deca.
yeah, or
Um,
like do a relay team or something for Hyrox and
yeah,
just
I think it's interesting though that they do that. So here's super interesting. They did one in China and they had more four-person teams than anything, which is not what
huh.
happens in America. America's like four-person teams is like the smallest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's interesting that that's how that goes. But yeah, they say that too. Like, oh, just try the relay because the two-person relay you're still doing all the running.
Yeah,
The four-person relay you only have to do two stations and two of the running.
yeah,
Um, but I think more than anything, I think what's going to keep people around is community. So it's like, find a club or a gym or something that and have somebody to do it with. I think that's always part of it, right?
yeah. Absolutely. I think I don't know. It just kind of just comes back to community. I think that's what made Spartan so successful was just the communities that built up, people that would run races together. Um, I think that
Have
helped.
you gotten like if you're down there in SoCal, there's got to be a bunch of gyms. Have you done like a Deca Strong and a Deca Mile?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah. It was fun. It was fun. It was like to me, it was more of a test of my aerobic fitness, which was crap at the time, and still is. But I think for me, it was like a really good. Now that I don't do CrossFit as much, it was kind of that like little wake up call of all right, so my aerobic base when I'm out there trail running as slow as I want to go is fine. But as soon as my heart rate kicks up, how quickly can I recover? How quickly can I focus and do these obstacles? So I think for me, it was like a cool test in that sense. Um,
But did you want to like, okay, now I want to beat this time. Now I want to make in the top 20 in my age group, or did any of that? Or you're just like, no, that was fun.
I think for me, it was more of a, I think I just need to get fitter overall. It was just like a good indication to me that like one part of my fitness was just lacking. So I think which I think this also speaks back to Ryan Kent's point of competing until I saw my performance on a leaderboard with the rest of my friends, honestly. Yeah, I'm stronger than a lot of them or was. But I was nowhere near as fast and I was nowhere near as aerobically fit. And having that little wake up call was like, all right, when I'm out here training by myself, doing my own thing, running my own race, blah, 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 that's cool and all, but I'm actually competitive and that sucked. So, like, so I think for me, it was more of like a readiness thing. Like, oh, if I'm left to my own devices and I'm not testing myself against my peers, I lean way more in the I'm just going to run up a really big mountain, which is cool and I'm good at it. But there is a huge window of fitness that I'm leaving untapped. And I think like Deka revealed that for me. Hyrox revealed that for me. There's a lot of flat running efficiency, speed that I don't work on that I should. Um, so yeah, I think for me it was less of like a Deka thing, and it was more of like a I just need to get fitter. Like I need to run more. I need to work on my speed. I need to work on my threshold and do all this associated work. So I think maybe it's just because I'm crazy, but I didn't care so much about the leaderboard. It was more just like I don't like being this low on it.
Right.
Um, I don't know. If I went back and did it again, I would want to see myself with a faster time, but only because I know that I am fitter overall when I did it. Like
Well,
I think you,
you're about to have that amazing post baby fitness, right? So then you can really
I hope
crush.
so. I hope so. I actually messaged Matt about rallying the valley. I was like, "Hey Matt, I'm gonna be 8 months postpartum, and I'm not Lauren Weeks. Um, am I gonna take a spot from someone who's like more deserving? Because like I don't know how I'm gonna be." He was super nice about it. He was like, "Just come. Like it's a test of your fitness. Just do what you can." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like I'm still gonna train really hard. Like I'm still gonna train as hard as I can, but
Right.
realistically, I don't know how this is gonna go." Um, but yeah, I feel like I would be very similar to a lot of the hybrid athletes that train with CHP, where it's more like doing a Hyrox or a Deca would probably reveal a weakness or a gap in the training that can occur very easily when you're just training by yourself.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of value there. But do people want to know? That's the question. I don't know. I think people should hang out with other people. I think people should get involved with their sport. I think that there's too many people training alone and self inflating their performance because they don't see anyone else doing it. But like, there's so many incredible athletes out there.
Right.
I don't know. Surround yourself with people that are better than you at something. Go to the run club with people that are faster than you. Go lift with people that are stronger than you. Like, be excited about it. That's how I am anyway. But that's what I think the benefit of the Hyrox and the Deca is you can go out on that running course and be like, I can run faster than that old lady next to me in the start. Whatever. And then she blows by you and you
Right.
never see her again. And you're like, oh my God,
Right.
never mind. Like,
That old lady is fast.
shit. Um, and also the next step would be, okay, well then I need to work harder, or if I care about this, this is something I need to work on. There's a ton of benefit and value in that. But if you just like doing stuff that's fun with friends, you could just find a Deca affiliate gym and do
Right.
box step overs in their workouts. Like, are you gonna do a Hyrox or a Deca coming up
I
soon anytime or
Not soon because
injured?
I'm super taking it easy on my
Yeah.
like I'm literally up to running 3 miles at a time, super not fast. I mean, and it's been 96 degrees here in the afternoon. I don't know if you saw, I posted a ridiculous picture of what it looked
Ugh,
like after I ran in 96-degree weather with really ridiculous humidity. Um,
ugh.
but yeah, I don't have a date yet, but there's a bunch of Deca gyms. I mean, they're not close to me; they're all in the burbs. But I have no excuses. I just got a bunch of stuff sent to me. I got Deca stuff sent. I got the big Ram sent to me.
Oh,
What
cool.
I got a brute force bag. I got lots of things that I can train with. And since I'm not a gym guy and I can do that stuff at home, I'm more likely to do it.
Yeah.
So, but no, I will eventually do both. I have one, I have one Deca time that doesn't even really count because it was on the beach in Jacksonville. It wasn't
Yeah.
on the beach. Sorry, it was at the beach in Jacksonville, and it wasn't. It was like me. I did it with Gary, and we like half-assed the station. Anyway, that one doesn't count. And then I did one Hyrox in Chicago, and I had never touched a sled. I'd never touched a skier. Like I'd never touched
Hmm.
any of those things. And that's my only time right now. So I know I can beat that.
That's
So
cool.
it'll be coming.
Cool. And you'll be super healthy and stoked when you do it, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I want to do this stuff, so I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
that's badass. You're looking forward at the hybrid space and everything that's coming and everything that's happened. Like, what's the one thing that kind of gives you the biggest like heart swelling? Is it the amount of athletes? Is it the community? Is it like what kind of makes you like just the happiest when you look at this whole?
I said on a recent podcast that I did that I was watching Lauren and Meg compete in the final event. Lauren Weeks and Meg Jacoby compete in the final event, and I thought, wow, these two women are the pinnacle of our sport right now, and it
Yeah,
it almost brought me to tears because I was just so impressed with what they were doing, and I'm around a lot of fit people a lot of the time, and first of all, I enjoy it. Like I just, I'm a goofball. I love cutting it up with people. I love busting balls. Like that's just who I am as a person. That's just me in the best like self-expression of myself, whatever I was doing. But the fact that I've chosen this sport, and if I bother to stop and look or take the time, I can get, I can get, you know, I can get excited. I can get inspired because it's easy to forget, right? It's like just like
yeah,
okay, whatever. We're doing this. Um, but yeah, being I think being at the beginning of something is also really cool. Like I didn't know it at the time with obstacle racing because we were just doing it. So I like now it's like, oh well, I'm the OG and like that's great. It's cool and I'm proud of everything I've done. But this I'm very aware of it. It's like, okay, cool, we're at the beginning of this thing and who knows where it's gonna go. So I'm very hopeful for the future. I know that's what gets me excited is that like we learn about some. It's like, oh, what's this event? Oh, what's this event? Oh, what's this a person? Oh, did you hear? But I mean, this kid Jack D Fitness. Like, I was gonna ask you if that was him that did like that sent you a workout and was like, oh, it's like that guy. Like, he
no,
nobody knows who this guy is. He's just out there doing stuff, and he showed up and um he's like, hey man, you guys have a leaderboard of like your top 20 people. I want to be one of those people. So
yeah, that's awesome. I agree. I agree, but I don't have nearly the insight that you have. So I feel like it's just got to feel even more awesome to be like
yeah,
in it.
it's fun, and again, it's hard. It's honestly hard to talk about when it's something that you just sort of do, right?
Mhm.
It's hard to look outside, and again, this is just like it's like when I'm doing this, I'm doing a podcast with someone. I'm like, this would be the exact same conversation if we were sitting having a coffee or going out to eat or whatever. Like it's not like I have like, let me put on my podcaster voice and ask you certain questions. If I
Yeah,
met you on the plane, I would be if I was interested in all of what you were doing, I would get really excited and really passionate. And oh, like how does that work?
yeah.
Cool. You know what I mean? So yeah.
No, I'm just so glad the industry has you. Like, so glad. Thank you for being here. Thank you for like just your time and turning it into a job for yourself instead of being like, oh, this will never work. Actually, like taking the leap and doing it because the industry is better having you in it. So just thank you. I think that's just awesome. And yeah, I'm just excited to see where things go and run into you somewhere, hopefully in the future.
Well, I was gonna say hopefully sooner than rally.
Yeah,
Maybe battle bunker. Maybe are you gonna be there?
I'm probably going to try and crash it. I'll be 8 months pregnant.
Okay.
Uh, but I'll try. I'll be there.
Yeah,
I'll sneak on.
my fall is looking pretty busy, so I'm not sure I can make it, but we'll see. And thank you for
That's a
saying very nice things, by the way. I want to make sure I said thank you because thank
oh,
you.
you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else specific.
Yeah, we can stay pals on the IG.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Instagram, if people want to follow your accounts, Can you give us really quickly, and I'll put this in the comments for the podcast as well, but the links to your Instagrams and what each of them represents, like what they can expect to see on each of them?
Oh, what they can expect to see. Wow. Well, the mothership, the thing that got this all started is something called Obstacle Racing Media, which if you put that into any of the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, website, it's all there. Obstacle Racing Media. 12, let's see, 11 years of um that. I mean, if you want to say anything, that's probably what I'm the most proud of. Like some people post like their podcast numbers, and I used to do that too. Here's episode 178, or here's what episode whatever. Um, I'm somewhere in the 900s, but the most proud of it is that it's been
Yeah.
going since 2012. That's the part I'm most proud of, and like
Yeah.
no one can take that away. Like I want to put down, like at some point it'll be like uh like all records are made to be broken, but it'll be like, okay, nobody.
Yeah. 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 And redefined, and yeah. Cool. And as always, you can find us at Complete Here Performance. Um, so yeah, give Matt a follow. Please follow him because that'll introduce you to a ton of really, really amazing athletes that you hopefully have heard of. But if you haven't, please check out all the stuff that he does in his interviews. Um, and yeah, just if you are a hybrid athlete, check this stuff out because there's a whole community there that's going to be really excited to have you. So yeah, thank you. I'm going to hit stop.